Okay, so in the first hour of the class, I hope to have given you some of the motivation for this course, why we're doing it, okay, and what are the topics we're going to be covering, all right, and what kind of thing we're going to be building. We are going to be building a somewhat distributed system that fulfills some need for the customer and so on, okay? So any questions about this? All right. Let me start telling you more about the policies of the course and how we're going to go about doing this. And then we'll see if you still have questions. Okay. All right. So policies. The syllabus is available online. All right. And let me just talk about the syllabus very briefly. Um, you should know all of this. Our TA is Jerry. I think some of you know Jerry, but she is, I'll introduce her to you all around the third week of class because she actually has another class right now. So she's going to pop in and say hello. You'll get to know her well because later in the semester, when you're working on your team projects, she'll be overseeing the progress and quality of your work and giving you issues on your GitHub about like your code and how you're progressing and stuff like that. And I'll be working with her on that. Okay. Okay. I'm going to ignore the first write-up. You're welcome to go read this on your own time. Okay. Well, what the course is about. I think I've given a 1-hour lecture on this paragraph. Okay. So I'm going to move on. So some things I want to bring to your attention, and I think I brought this to your attention already, the prerequisites. This is a software engineering course. You need to have serious software engineering background to do this course. Okay. Couple more things. AI, can't escape it. This class is an unrestricted AI use class, so you can use Copilot, ChatGPT, whatever you want, to your heart's desire. That's not a problem in this course, okay? So that's that, okay? Grading. So this is something I want to talk about carefully. So your grades are based on your individual performance in this class, all right? There will be a team project this semester, and you need to work in teams of 2 or 3 people, all right? However, the team does not, everyone in the team does not get the same grade necessarily. You get a grade depending on your contribution to the team. So if you did everything on the team, congratulations, you're getting an A plus perhaps, or an A, all right? But if you did nothing on the team, you're not going to pass the class. So the whole team does not get the same grade. We look at everyone's individual coding contributions. How do we do that? We look at your commits. We see what you worked on. We get to know you as a developer, all right? So we know who you are and what you're doing and what you're working on. We will be using Git for version control. How many of you, please pay attention, it's a poll. How many of you have used Git for version control before? Okay. Most of you have. Okay, I can do a reorientation if anybody wants, but I'll ask that later in the semester. If somebody wants, we can have an evening session. We can talk about Git and how to use it. I may still do one just to perhaps to show you how I would like you to use it, and we'll talk a little bit about that. Okay. All right. What else do I want to talk about? Your coding and so your project in the beginning of the semester and maybe some points over the rest of the semester, you will have individual coding assignments you have to do. So you'll get some assignment, you have to write some code yourself. You can use AI. I cannot stop you. That's why it says unrestricted use. Okay. However, I will tell you something very clearly. If you use it extensively, you're not going to learn. And meaning you're not going to be able to learn the style and programming that we're doing in this class. My strong suggestion to all of you, and I do this myself when I'm learning a new language or a new framework or something like that, I turn the AI off. I force myself to make mistakes and go, why is that a mistake? Let me figure it out. And of course, I can ask ChatGPT, why is this a mistake? But I don't want is to just see the thing and hit tab and it's written for me, because then I didn't really, my fingers didn't learn. And the thing about programming that if you haven't realized by now, it's not an intellectual thing as you think it is. It's really you learn through your fingers, not through your eyes. Okay, so it's important that your fingers make mistakes and your fingers learn to fix the mistakes. It'll become muscle memory how to do things. Okay, so my strong use is turn it off at least for the first third of the semester. Then you can turn it back on when you think you know what you're doing. All right. And I advise this for anything, like if you're learning a new programming language, I seriously recommend turn off that Copilot, because it'll do things for you that are either right or wrong, and you don't know. You're too early to know if it's right or wrong, you know? So become a moderate, medium, moderate user of a language or a framework, and then turn it back on. And then it'll do things that you would have done out of naturally, but it'll do it faster, okay? But it's not a good learning tool as a Copilot. It's a great learning tool if you're just prompting it and asking it, what does this look like? Why doesn't this work? I can't figure it out. That's great. All right. Okay. So that's your individual homeworks. Yes, Copilot can probably solve your homeworks for you, but give it a shot yourself. I'm not really interested in like your grade. I'm interested, this is an opportunity, the only opportunity you have to learn the language, the frameworks we're using before you start actually working on your project, okay? So you do not want to enter your team project and say, I don't know what I was doing. Copilot did it all for me. So now I can't help you guys, okay? That's 20% of your grade. 70% of your grade is your team project. And on your team project, like I just said, we look at your commits to see who wrote which line of code, and that's what you get credit for. Okay. I have some students who complain to me that, oh, I wrote some code, but my teammates wrote over it and they corrected it, and now they get the credit. And I say, yeah, they get the credit. That's how it works. All right. So the last person to touch a line of code gets the credit. That's the way it works. Okay. If you don't like that and you feel that's not correct way to do it for your team, tell me, and I will adjust accordingly. Okay. But otherwise, I look at the Git blame history to see who committed who touched the line of code last. Okay. And I do this, and I do this because it resolves the problem of students like basically copy pasting my code in from my class into the project. It doesn't work in your project, and you just let your teammates fix it. All right. So the students who do that, and they think, wow, I added 100 lines of code. No, you copy pasted my code. That's not even your code. So you don't get credit for it because your teammates had to fix it for you. They get the credit for it. Okay. Okay. Online participation is 10 points. No, class and online participation is 10 points, which means, please pay attention to this. You cannot get an A+ in this class if you don't talk or come to class or talk online. Okay, so you must participate in one way or the other. The easiest way to get the full 10%, just come to class. You've got your points right there. Okay, if you're missing classes, you're not going to make this 10%. You can make up a little bit. You can make up a couple of percent by maybe talking online or speaking in class. That'll give you a little bit of extra credit. And if that's extra, that it'll become your extra credit. But if you've missed one or two classes, you might be able to catch it up if you've been very actively participating in the class, okay? Like talking, right? Otherwise, the easiest way to make sure you get this 10%, just come to class. It's simple. Done deal, okay? You get my full 10%. So this is my grading policy. Any questions about that? Okay, you're right. Great. Let's talk a little bit about the outline of the course. Oh, this may change a little bit, but essentially the course is going to be divided into actually I thought I changed this anyway. I'm going to be there's 17 sessions here, but we only have 16 classes, so I'm going to be compressing them a little bit. I'm not missing anything. I'm just going to be compressing it into 16 sessions. All right, so the first 2 weeks are kind of an introduction to information theory and setting up your operating system and language and platform and stuff like that, okay? That's the first module of the class, is an introduction. The second module of the course, which is the next 3 to 4 classes, I think I'm going to try to compress this down into 3 classes, is going to be an introduction to applied cryptography, okay? I think some of you might have, how many of you have taken a cryptography class, like an actual cryptography class? 2%, 3%, 4%. You're taking it right now. Okay, so that's great. I'm not teaching it at a fundamentals mathematical level. I'm going to be teaching it at an applied level and showing you how it's used in practice, which may or may not be different from what you're learning in a cryptography class, which could be interesting. Okay, but I'll give you the intuition behind a lot of the cryptographic algorithms. So even if you're not taking a cryptography class, you can have a legitimately competent conversation with somebody about cryptography, okay, from an applied point of view. Trust me. All right. All right. So that's going to be about cryptography. And then from after that point, we are going to be essentially working on your project for the next, what is it? A little bit more than half of the semester. Okay. We're going to be working on your project. So about for 2/3 of the semester. So the team project is not something you do in the last 2 weeks of class. We're going to be doing it from week 6 or 7 onwards. We're going to be working on it week by week. All right. And we're going to be, talking about how to implement your system step by step, add security to it, et cetera, et cetera. So we're going to have 2-3 weeks about how to store data. All right. Dealing with databases and data storage. We're going to have another module about users, about authentication, and mainly about authentication of users, but also a little bit more about how to track their sessions and kind of capture the user experience in a secure manner. So we'll be talking about that. And then we're going to have the last module will be really just about authorization. So we'll have several lectures about authorization, both from a technical point of view, both how to use like cryptographic tokens to implement authorization, but also from a architectural point of view, how to write policies as code and things like that, okay? And about other authorization protocols. Now, the order of this stuff might change a little bit over the semester, okay? I'm playing with the notion of mixing up the order a little bit, but these are the topics we will cover, okay? And then the last week of class, it should be the 16th session, but I'll talk about when that might happen. That will be a final team presentation. So you will get up and you'll present your project. You'll demo your project and talk about the things you've implemented over the semester. All right. Any question about the topics? No, you're okay. All right. Moving on. What's this? All right. So attendance is required in the class, and from week 3, when the registration is stabilized, we'll be tracking your attendance through our own little system. Okay, you'll be tracking your own attendance. I'll put it that way. We'll give you a system. You come in and you log in and you track your attendance. You just say I'm here. Okay, so that'll be that. Okay. And if you fully attend, you get your 10% participation points. Great. If you participate and you attend fully, you get extra credit. You could miss 1 or 2 classes and catch up those grades by participating heavily throughout the semester. Okay. So if you know you're going to be gone 1 or 2 weeks, probably no more than that, you could catch it up by starting from the beginning of the semester, participating, talking, sharing stuff online on our Microsoft Teams, which I'll show you, etc. All right. Do I have something about? Okay. Before I get into our course platforms, there is a difficult matter to discuss, which is our classes, because there's going to be 3 national holidays on Fridays this semester. Here is my proposed battle plan on how we're going to catch those courses up, because I don't want to skip any courses. We only have 15 lectures and a final presentation. Here's my proposition. You tell me if it just doesn't work for you, but if it works for most of you, we're going to go with it. Okay. So here's my proposition. On days, so there'll be 2 days. There'll be 3 holidays where we're going to miss Fridays. For 2 of them, I propose to move the lecture from Friday morning to Thursday evening. Okay. If you agree with it, here's my deal. If you where's my deal? If you agree with it, dinner is provided. Okay. Pizza by default, but if you guys want something other than pizza, we can do something other than pizza. Okay. So dinner and a light beverage is provided if you are willing to cooperate and come in on Thursday evening. All right. However, there's one, so that'll be on February 28th, which is next week. We're gonna do it on Thursday evening. All right. So bring your blanket, bring your pajamas, and your teddy bear, and we're gonna do an evening session here. Okay. You can sleep over if you want. The building will be locked. You can get up in the morning and leave. Okay. Okay. And the same on from May 30th back to May 29th, evening session. All right. However, the 7th week of class, which is April 4th, we cannot move it one day behind because That's also a holiday. There's 2 holidays, and I know I forgot what's on the second. There's something else happening on the second, but many people just like to escape on the second anyway and have a super long weekend. So I can't blame you. So I'm thinking it'll be too difficult to hold class that week. So we move that. So we just kind of skip that week. We catch it up later, but we skip that week. Instead, what I propose is the final presentations. We typically do it on week 16, which is the exam week. Okay. Now, which is great for me because I get to finish, we're all done, and you can leave. However, I know it's very stressful for students because that's also the week where other projects are due and other exams happen. Okay. By the way, there's no exams in this class. You just homeworks and team project. There's no exams. Okay. So here's a proposition I have. Um, how about we move the final day of, how about we just skip week 7 and we catch it up by adding one extra session on week 17, the week after classes, after the 16th week. And that will just be a final presentation, not a lecture. Okay. That gives you the benefits are that we don't have to somehow catch up week 7 earlier in the week, which is a little too hectic. Okay. And we don't have to get super stressed out on week 16 because you already have other exams and projects due that week. Instead, the next week, maybe as soon as the next Monday, so just 3 days later, we do our final session, which is the team presentations. In fact, if you want, we could even do it a little later that week, all the way till Friday maybe, but maybe get it over with earlier is even better. Okay, so that's something we can negotiate as we come closer to the end of the semester, what works, but just keep in mind that we may want to book some day of week 17. I would prefer earlier. If you wish that it was a little bit later in that week, we can maybe do that, but we have to have a consensus because some of you may want to leave and go other places as well. Okay, how does this sound? Is any of this not possible for anybody? Okay, I have a strong suggestion, which is make sure your advisor knows this if you have an advisor, because sometimes I have students come and tell me, oh, my advisor decided we're going to have lab meetings Thursday afternoons or evenings or something like that. So make sure people around you are aware that some Thursday evenings before the holidays, you are kind of booked. Is that okay? Reasonable? All right. Everything okay over there? Okay. You don't have to be happy as long as it's okay. Okay. Just okay is good enough. All right. Okay. And like I said, final presentations, we can do it just a little bit later than the following week, as soon as the following Monday, because basically we would still have, we will see, because we would still have class on week 16 on the 6th. And maybe we'll do it not Monday, but maybe Wednesday or something like that. Okay. And I'll make sure that anything I teach on the week 16 is easy to implement. So it won't be like something crazy that will take you like days and days and days. It should be something you could just add to your system within one day. Okay. And we'll talk about what that is. It's the easiest thing to add to your system. All right. So that's my makeup plan for catching up with all these courses. So beginning with next week, Thursday evening. Right? Reasonable? Everyone okay? All right. Whew. I thought I was going to get a lot more resistance than that. You guys are too nice. All right. Okay, let's move on. This class uses a couple of platforms. In fact, we're going to use 1 or 2 more platforms later in the semester, but to begin with, we use a couple of platforms. One is Canvas. You should have gotten an email invitation to Canvas if you're registered for the class. If you're not registered and you register, I will send you that invitation. I will check the registration information tomorrow or the day after, over the weekend, and I'll send you that invitation. How many of you have already gotten a Canvas invitation? Okay. You did not receive one yet. Did you register already? Okay, search for the word Canvas. Okay, and if you really didn't get it, let me know. I'll send you another invitation. Okay, it may have gone to your junk folder or spam or something like that. I don't know. All right. Essentially, let me just quickly open this up. So our Canvas website looks like this, right? Let me go to the student view. Oh, and I have to set up your assignment. I'll say more about your assignment for next week. It's simple, don't worry, okay? Um, and okay, so but for now, what you will see is when you accept the invitation, you will see first the thing you'll see is another link to invite you to Microsoft Teams. If you click on this, you will join our Microsoft Teams. If you do not have a Microsoft Teams account from the school, you can use this link to get some instructions of who to contact to get your your Office 365 account. Okay, I suggest getting it. Why not? Okay, but please use that to join Microsoft Teams because that is where we will do our excuse me. That is where we will do our weekly. Here we go. Let me close some things down. Okay. So this is where we're going to do our weekly classes. So there's a few channels in here. This is like Slack. If you've never used Microsoft Teams, it's just like Slack. So there's a general channel where I'll this is just for announcements for the class. Okay. So please don't ask specific questions here. This is just, unless you have a question about when is the class, where is it, what's going on, something about the scheduling, you can ask it here, or some high level policy question, you can ask it here. Okay. If you have a question about a specific week, like what we talked about this week, you can ask it in the channel for that week. For example, 01, that's this week. All right. And you'll also notice I'm live streaming and recording it here. The recordings, I will try to upload them onto YouTube over the weekend. Okay. So, and if for some reason you are sick, you can just do the live stream. Now, just to say a little bit more about attendance, attendance is required. If you're sick, you don't need to tell me you're not coming unless you need to, but because you don't get attendance, there's no excuse for missing class. You just miss a class. That's it. Okay, you lose attendance points. But if you have to because you're sick, you just have to because you're sick. Okay, but you can at least watch the live stream or the recordings over the weekend. All right. All right. There's another channel called Entropy, which is where we'll just post just general news, links, something funny, stupid can go over here. Okay. All right. So on Canvas, excuse me, you'll see the link to join the Microsoft Teams. A link to our syllabus is available here. There's a survey that I would like you to fulfill ASAP. Okay. In fact, I'm going to move this into the week one assignments shortly, just to get to know you a little bit better and to know your technical skill set. Okay. So it'll be a survey about that. There's a link here that to a Google Drive folder where I will upload the class handout for the week. Is right. My slides are right here. Okay. But I'll only update the slides for every week the morning of the class. Okay. So you will not get them in advance. I'm sorry. It's because even though I've taught the class for over a decade, I still adjust it every single year. Okay. Because the world changes. Right. Okay. What else? Oops, sorry. On Canvas, there is also, so every week there will be assignments. Let me just kind of show you briefly what the assignments for this coming week are. It's pretty simple, okay? So actually, I'll talk about it after I've introduced a little bit more of our coding, okay? So this is Canvas, okay, and I'll talk about the assignments, okay? Microsoft Teams, there you go. All right. Let's talk about what tools and language and programming we're going to be doing this semester. So my philosophy in all my classes, and all my classes are coding classes, is that we use pretty much free open source tools for the most part. We might use some commercial services, but I will try to make sure those you can get for free through some kind of student program or something like that. Okay. So it's everything should be free and open source. I believe in open source tools. However, we do not use too many high-level interface elements. I like you to write all your code by hand. We do not use some amazing wizards to drag and drop and do stuff. We just write everything as code. Okay. I believe you should learn through your fingers what the code looks like. Okay. All right. So first of all, let's talk about operating systems. You have to work on a Unix-based operating system in this class, okay? Because we are going to deploy stuff to production, which is going to be on a Unix machine. Let's just use Unix, okay? And it's the most friendly system for programming, generally speaking, unless you're doing .NET programming. All right. So how many of you are working natively on a Linux machine or a Unix machine? 1, 2, 3 of you. Okay, great. You're good to go. All right. How many of you are on Windows machines? Get out. I'm kidding. You're good to go. Just use WSL2. Sorry, it's old WSL2 Windows Subsystem for Linux. You're good to go. Okay. How many of you are on a Mac? All right. Wait a minute. You're cheating. You're double dipping. You're on both. You got a VMware. Okay. If you're on a Mac, you can work natively on a Mac because it's a Unix-based operating system. You're fine. Okay. Your choice. All right. If you want to work on a virtual machine, actually, this is the year where I removed the virtual machine symbol because that was another option for students, but I haven't used one in years. But you can work on a Linux virtual machine, or you can work on Mac OS natively. This is totally fine. Okay. Only thing I want to say about Mac OS, no, you guys are fine. Once a year, there's an update to the Mac operating system, and I usually tell students wait a few weeks because sometimes it damages developer tools and you have to get the next patch. So that's it. Okay. All right. Since we're going to be using Unix, welcome to use whichever Unix shell you want. How many of you know that you are operating on Bash? Maybe on Bash. Okay. Yeah, maybe WSL2, I believe, is using Bash, right? How many of you are on Z Shell? Few on Z Shell. What are you guys using? What are the rest of you using? Fish or something else? What's that? Just Bash? Okay, okay. If you're using Bash or Z Shell, no problem. I'll tell you more about it. But essentially, get comfortable with what these files are because you may have to modify them from time to time. Okay. So on Bash, it's called .profile. This is all in your home directory. Okay, these are in your home directory. .profile, .bashrc, .bash profile. Know what they are because sometimes some tools need to update them for something, so be comfortable with what they are. I've given a basic description of what they are here. I will not get into it more. If you're on Z Shell, Mac OS uses Z Shell by default. Get used to .profile, .zshrc, and zshenv, okay? Is the equivalent to these files in Bash, okay? So just get comfortable with them. And from time to time, I'll give you some nice little shortcuts for Git and things that you can modify these files and get access to those aliases and stuff. Okay. So, and also for those of you who are not super comfortable with the Unix operating system, over the first 2 to 3 weeks, I will offer some optional tutorial online that you can do to get comfortable operating around Unix, moving between directories at the command line. Okay. So just get comfortable with that. Okay. Get comfortable with one command line editor, which means not a super graphical one, but just a basic one you can run from the command line. Okay. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you're a Nano customer. Okay. Nano is a great choice. It's just a command line editor that you can access through excuse me, let me just zoom in a little bit. Okay, that you can access through your command line. So from the command line prompt, it's just a text editor. It's super simple. And the nicest thing about it is you know how to exit because you're told right here. Okay, so you won't be stuck in it forever. So Control X to get out of there, Control S to save, etc. How many of you are Emacs users? Are we a dying breed? Yeah, no, okay, we're a dead breed. How many of you are Vim, NeoVim users? Oh, okay, couple. Okay, great, great, great. Excellent choice. Okay. If for the rest of you, if you don't know which one, pick one. Okay. If you wanna try something cool and new, there's so many cool and new ones. I'm a bit of a fan of Micro. You can go check that out. All right. And it's got like a few things I like multi-cursor support and stuff like that I'm used to from VS Code. Okay. So get used to one of these and make sure that either in your bash rc or zshrc file, you tell Unix what your default command line editor is. Okay, pick one, install it, and make sure you use that one. Nano's probably already installed on all your systems. Okay, and just say this. The reason for this is because, as you may be aware, when you're using certain tools like Git, when you have to make commits and stuff, it may want you to type some stuff. It'll jump to your default editor, and it's best if you specify the one you want. Okay, I won't say more about that. Modern, we'll also be using a GUI editor. I highly recommend it, unless you super love Vi. If you're a Vi or Vim fan, try NeoVim. That's like supposed to be the coolest thing. Okay. I recommend Visual. How many of you already use VS Code? everyone, it took over. It just took over. Okay. If it's too popular and you want to be a little bit different, you're welcome to try out Zed. It's a cool new system. It's written in Rust. It's high performance. It's not an Electron. It's not a browser in an application illusion. It's a native thing. I believe it. I don't know if it'll work on Windows, but you can see if it's available on Windows. All right. Yeah, and they should all have support for both of them have support for like Copilot and what have you. Okay. So welcome to try these out. Okay, that's so you're comfortable with these, right? Okay, good. Let's talk about the language. Like it or not, this class does not use Python. It's the only class in the world that does not use Python. Okay, we use another language, we use Ruby. How many of you have used Ruby before? Maybe some of you through my classes. The rest of you have not. Okay, we'll be using a different language. Why? For a couple of reasons. One is you all know Python. I don't want to teach a class that you already know. Partly because it's very hard, I find, to get students to get out of their bad habits in a language they already know because it's just part of your working habits. Rather, I wish you learn a new language and trust me, after you've learned a new language, you'll go back to Python or JavaScript or whatever you use, and you'll realize you could be using it better. All right. So I think it's always great to learn a new language. Not to mention, for anybody who wants to get super serious in security, there are some very well-regarded platforms like Metasploit, which is a platform for security pen testing and training for security, which is written in Ruby as well. Um, it's going to be a different language, but it's only going to take 3 weeks to learn it. And if you have only ever learned Python, Java, C++, it's going to be a really wonderful breather for you because it's going to show you what other languages look like. Okay. And a lot of other new languages borrow a lot of ideas from Ruby, from Rust to Swift to Elixir to you name it. A lot of the new kids on the block, they borrow a lot of programming ideas from Ruby because it's just a very, very well-designed language. So one of the things I promise students is once you learn Ruby, you'll never be afraid to learn another language, okay? Except for Rust. That's a little bit scary. It'll just kind of show you a new way of writing code. And I think it's just a wonderful thing just to have. And also, I really tell students, you should not be afraid of learning a new language. Okay. It should be just a few weeks exercise for you. You should be always flexible. The vast majority of you will go work in companies where you do not use a language you know. Okay. You may be a place, but most of my students have ended up working with like they were not Java programmers that ended up working in Java or Scala or Swift or some other language they didn't know anyway, and they had to learn it from scratch anyway. So get to learn a new language, and it's going to show you some new paradigms that is popular with newer languages. And I think it'll be fun and useful for you as a programmer. Okay. Now, I will tell you though, however, Ruby is not like it looks like Python, but it's different in significant ways. And we'll talk about that today. All right. As the day goes on. All right. So, oh, and I love the fact that Ruby is the only major language I know that was created in Asia. It's created in Japan. It's a Japanese language. Okay. And it's a highly object-oriented language. You'll see why it's a highly object-oriented language in ways that Python and Java are not. Though Java is going to make a transition to this style of object orientation soon. All right, so that's also good. Java is about to make a big leap of faith and adopt Ruby Smalltalk style object orientation in one of its next releases. Okay. It's a language that has a ton of web frameworks because it's a popular tool for web development. Okay. The most famous of them is Ruby on Rails. How many of you have heard of Ruby on Rails? Heard of it? Heard of it? Never heard of it? If you've never heard of it, no problem because we don't use it. Okay. I use a different framework called Rhoda. It's a lower level framework which forces you to write a lot of things by yourself, which I think is good because a lot of security stuff you're gonna have to do it yourself. It's not a high-level framework that's like, oh, we encrypt your database for you. You will have to do it yourself, okay? Why do I want you to use a lower-level framework that forces you to write a lot of code for yourself? Because two reasons. One, you may end up one day working in a company or a place where you're using a web framework which does everything for you. but you'll be surprised how often they make bad decisions in terms of security, okay? And we'll explain why that is over the semester, why a lot of sophisticated web developers make really poor security decisions, because they're two different worlds. And just knowledge of programming doesn't give you knowledge of security, all right? That's one reason. So sometimes you'll be able to say, yeah, this framework does it this way, but I don't think we should be doing it this way. This is a bad practice, okay? The second reason is, if you ever catch on to a new language like Rust or Go or one of the cool new languages that are out there, you're not going to have a Ruby on Rails or a Django type framework waiting for you. You're going to have some basic tools, and you should know how the internals work so that you can make stuff yourself and not wait 10 years for a mature framework to come and do everything for you. Okay, so we're going to be using a lower level framework which forces you to learn a lot of security principles and encode them yourself. Okay. And then as you go on into other places, you may be using frameworks that does it for you, and you'll be able to ask yourself and your company, is this the right way to do it? Or should we turn this off and do it ourselves? Okay. All right. What else? Okay, it's an interesting language. We'll show you that it looks quite a bit different when you write it in the style in which it is meant to be written. We'll talk about that later, and it's got a strong community around it. Okay. This is the language. There are some students who tell me, sorry, I cannot take this class because I don't want to learn a new language. And I say, no problem, because this is the least of the things you'll be learning. Okay, so this is not the big challenge of the class. Oh, another advantage is if you do learn this language, you're welcome to take my architecture class next year because we use the same language, same platforms. It'll be the same tooling. For those of you who've already taken architecture class, same stuff. Okay, all right, moving on. One of the things you'll have to do this week in terms of your assignments, let's jump back to your assignments, okay, is first, you're going to have to create 2 user accounts. One is on Codecademy. This is, how many of you have used Codecademy before? Okay, it's just an online platform where you can learn languages. It gives you a tutorial to interactively write code, and it'll give you challenges and you learn a language, okay? Pretty easy. You can learn the basics of Ruby through that. If you've done the Ruby Codecademy already, then you don't have to do it. You've done it. But if you haven't, you have to do it, and we'll grade that you've done it. Okay. It's really easy. It's really fun. A lot of students tell me, okay, that was a lot simpler than I thought it was going to be. All right. The other thing is you have to have a GitHub username. How many of you already have a GitHub username? You do? Okay, great. I do have a suggestion for you. Before you start the semester, consider if you want a new GitHub username. Okay. Get a GitHub username that is going to be your persona for many years to come. Don't make it like NTHU student ID and or something like that. Make it your superhero username, okay? And it's going to be your identity as a software developer for decades to come. So choose it carefully. All right. I use, as I mentioned in my notes, sorry, I'm going to jump up really fast. Sorry about that. I use Somi Array, and I use it on every single platform. But there's a lot of Somi Arrays out there, believe it or not. So every time a new platform comes on, I just jump on and create an account right away. Okay, I'm like camping on all the Somi Array accounts around the world. All right. Okay. So scroll down, scroll down, scroll down, scroll down. All right. What else? Okay, so the things you'll have to do this week are going to be you'll have to create an account on Codecademy and a GitHub username. And this link here, you will use this link on Canvas to submit those 2 names to us, so we know who you are. That way we can check your Codecademy tutorials, that you're doing them on time, and we can make sure you're on GitHub, because that's the way we will identify you on your projects later on. So please, do not change your GitHub username after like 1 or 2 weeks, okay? If you want to change it, do it now. Pick a nice name. If you don't know what to pick, just pick your name, okay? Otherwise, pick a nice name, nice handle that you think identifies you for good, okay? All right, your second task will be to set up Unix and Ruby. If you've already got Unix set up, that's great. If you don't know, you can go take a look on it here, and to set up the Ruby language. Now, to set up the Ruby language, oh, and I'll come back to that in a moment. Then there'll be some tutorials you have to do on Codecademy. And after you do the tutorials, there'll be a little quiz that you can fill out to tell us. We're going to ask you, I think, no, there's no quiz. You just do the tutorials in Codecademy. We can see your Codecademy profile and see that you've done them or not, okay? All right. And there's an optional tutorial here. This is not interactive. It's just reading material. But it'll tell you things you can do to get familiar with Unix operating system if you're not familiar with it. Or if you're on a Mac, you just use how to get familiar with your terminal, which is a Unix shell. Okay, just basic things: how to print directories, how to see the processes that are running, stuff like that. Okay, so just do that. All right. The Ruby and Unix tutorials will be spread across 3 weeks. So for 3 weeks, you'll be doing Ruby tutorials and Linux and Unix tutorials. Okay. If you already know how to use Unix, you don't have to do the Unix tutorials. And we're not grading the Unix tutorial. That's optional for you. Okay. Um, let's talk a little bit more about setting up Ruby. So I highly encourage you, whatever languages you're using, always use a language version manager. Okay. How many of you use Python regularly or semi-regularly? Okay. Do you use a Python version manager? You do? What do you use? PyEnv. Okay. Have you used PyEnv before? You have? You sure? Not lying to me? Okay. All right. So PyEnv, so something like that, that helps you manage multiple versions of a programming language on your computer, because different projects you're working on could be using slightly different versions of the language. Okay. And if you have a project that's long-lived, you probably don't want to keep updating it because it could break all the packages and things. So you got to be able to kind of manage it well. Okay. Ruby's version manager, there's a couple. I highly recommend RBENV. All right, RBENV. Actually, PyENV is which is for Python, is actually a fork of RBENV. All right, so that's where it comes from. So RBENV is kind of so if you use PyENV, it looks exactly like that because that's where it came from. So you install this, and I'll give you instructions on Canvas on how to install it. So just go read those instructions and you install RBENV. And once you've installed RBENV, follow the instructions to install the latest version of Ruby, which I believe is, my instructions may be wrong, and this is also wrong. The latest version, I believe, is 3.4.2. Install the latest version of Ruby. So all you have to do is say RBENV, install, and then 3.4.2, and it'll install the latest version. Okay. Where does it install your Ruby? It installs it here. It installs it in the .rbnv folder in your home directory under versions. It'll literally put the Ruby interpreter there. Okay. There's another kit on the block which I'm very fancy of, but it's made a big version change which could cause some problems. It's got a name you will never forget because you could type it with your eyes closed. It's called literally ASDF. Okay. And getting started. ASDF. Is this the one I'm looking for? Yeah. No, it's not the autism spectrum disorder. All right. So let me go to the homepage for this. ASDF. This is like RBENV or PyEnv, but it's for every language. You can manage every language on your system through one version manager if you want. Pretty cool. And it works almost the same way, like RBENV and PyEnv, in that whenever you start a new project, what you can do is within the project, you can say RBENV init, and that will create a .ruby version file with the version of Ruby for this folder, for this project. ASDF does the same thing, but it's got a file called .tool versions or something like that, okay? PyEnv will create like Python version or something like that, I think, right? You can set the local, for the local project, you can set the language by saying RBENV local, blah, blah, blah. Or you could just say RBENV global 3.4.2, and then your whole computer will use 3.4.2 by default. But you should always have a .ruby version file in your Ruby projects so that any programmer cloning your project knows exactly which version of the language is operating on. Okay, there's a possibility, there's a strong possibility that over the semester this patch number will change. Like they may release 3.4.3 or 3.4.4, and I will be asking us to all collectively update over the semester. So because that's part of the security practices, okay? So we'll see how to do that, okay? So keep your Ruby updated. If you're on a Unix operating system, on a Mac system, you can inform RBENV of the latest versions by brew upgrading your Ruby build. I don't remember how to do this for Unix or WSL2. I think you just have to reinstall Ruby build for those operating systems, and it'll get the latest definition of the latest versions of the language. Okay, and then you do RBNV. You can ask it what are the language versions you are aware of. Here's all the versions it's aware of, and you tell it which one you want to install. Okay. Did I have a slide about? Okay. Did I not have a slide about? I think I removed a slide. Okay. Well, is it here? No, it's not there. Okay. Let me quickly. You may be confused to see a whole different styles of Ruby. These are the C implementations of Ruby, which is that Ruby, like Python, transpiles into C language, and then it compiles C and interprets C language line by line. Okay, so that's how Ruby works, just like Python. Okay, however, just like Python, there's other flavors of Ruby. This is used by large enterprises, which is Ruby that transpiles into Java. What's it called? What's the intermediate format for Java? What's that? Bytecode. Thank you. This transpiles Ruby into Java bytecode, which makes your Ruby application compatible with the Java ecosystem and all the packages for Java. Okay. This is mRuby. This is for embedded devices. This is, I don't know what PicoRuby is even for. I really don't know. Truffle Ruby is interesting. It's a kind of a sort of a fork of JRuby, I think, but it's a much faster, higher performance version of Ruby. Okay, so and it's very interesting. It comes out of Oracle's Graal project, I believe. Okay, but we're going to use the regular C version of Ruby. Ruby is, like Python, a slow language because it is interpreted. Okay, like Python, there is an interpreter, but there's two things you have to be aware of. If you have a Ruby script, like let's take this one, okay, you can run it by just typing Ruby, okay, and then the name of the script, okay. In my case, this is a script which can this is a script I wrote that I'll show you in a second. It reads a website and saves the HTML in a file that you define. Okay, so I just run that, and ta-da, I should now have a ISS HTML file which has like the HTML for my institute's website. Okay, so let me just delete that quickly though. All right. However, if you just want to and Python does it the same way, right? You say Python and blah, blah, blah. However, with Ruby, if you want to actually jump to a prompt and play with Ruby at a prompt, in Python, it's just called Python, but in Ruby, it's called IRB, okay? And this is an interactive Ruby prompt. I stands for interactive, RB stands for Ruby, all right? And it's just like typing Python and going to the Python prompt, exact same thing, but for Ruby language. That's it, okay? 1 + 1, yay! Okay. All right, get out there. All right, exit to get out, or Control D to end of file, get out. Okay. All right, let's move on. Let me say a couple of things about the Ruby programming language. All right. Before I do that, does anybody need to take a quick break? Anybody need to go to the bathroom? Everyone okay? Okay. Can I just ask for a favor, however? Can we just all stand up and stretch a little bit? Okay. So we're done with the course policies, course platforms, and your assignments. Just stretch your hammies, okay? Don't pull a muscle from security class. Get some blood flowing. Do it regularly. You guys are young. You may be like, waste of time. You get to my age. You trust me. If you don't do it, your body will complain. Okay. All right. Okay. You can take a seat when you're ready, or you can keep standing if you wish. It's your life. All right. So a couple of things. You'll be learning Ruby through the online tutorials. Super easy tutorial. I will spend some time in class to review the important concepts of the tutorial, especially those that are different from other languages. I promise you it's time well spent, because if you learn some of the crazy, cool new languages, they use a lot of the idioms of Ruby. Okay, you'll be surprised to see how influential this language is on other languages. All right. And there's a reason for that, which I'll tell you briefly, all right? Which is that Ruby comes not from the same history as Python and Java. it comes from a different history. It's a derivative in a way of the Smalltalk language, which was one of the original object-oriented languages in the world. Okay, and so it has a slightly different structure, but it's for modern languages, they're like a lot of the ideas that Ruby popularized from Smalltalk, and you'll see them a lot in new languages. Okay, however, Ruby programmers express themselves slightly differently, and I just want to tell you quickly that I will not be able to read your code if you write your Ruby code the way you write your Python code or your JavaScript code, because the idioms are different. Okay. A simple example I use is this is completely valid Ruby. This works just the same way it works in Python or JavaScript. Okay. Put S is, by the way, a print command. It just prints to screen with a new line character at the end. Okay. This is perfectly valid Ruby code, but this is very unusual Ruby code. Okay, because the language has other ways of expressing this idea. All right. How does it express the idea if not like this? What does this do, by the way? Come on, it's a simple one. It checks for the age. That the age is obviously not negative, okay? But you could still be 0 because maybe you're born. I don't know. All right. But the way to express this in Ruby is slightly different. When you have a very short one line within the if statement, you don't have to write 3 lines to do it. You just write it like this. You say, do this if age is less than 0. Okay. That's just the idiomatic way to do it. This works, but this is what Ruby programmers expect you to do. Okay, it's like the way we speak in English. We say, close the door if you're leaving, right? We don't say if you are leaving, then close the door. You could say it, but more naturally in English we say it the other way around. Okay, so it's the same idea. Here's another one. If choice equals exit, return false, else blah 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 blah. Okay, seems reasonable. Believe it or not, in every programming language, this is discouraged. Okay, but in Ruby, this is highly discouraged. But in most professional programming, you shouldn't write code like this. Why? How should you write it? Do you know what it does? It just checks if some variable is exit. If it is, you get out of this method, get out of this function, right? Otherwise, you do what you came here to do, right? The idiomatic way to do this in Ruby, and actually all major languages today, is this. Return false if choice is exit, and then if it's not exit, you just do the thing you came here to do. You don't have to like make a new body for this else. You don't need the else statements. Okay. These are called guard clauses. I'll bet you money if you Google in Python or Java or any other language how to, this is the way you're supposed to do it professionally. You're supposed to write a guard clause, a line that tells you all the conditions under which you should not run this function, and then you do the function. You shouldn't like check this and that and exit in weird places. You should just do all those checks up front if you can. Okay, that's just a style of programming. It's highly encouraged in Ruby, but it's now increasingly encouraged in every language. Right. Here's another one. This is going to really bother you. You're either going to love this or hate this. You decide. Okay. Put S, so print error if valid is some Boolean object, true or false. Okay. So put error if not valid. This has got to be idiomatic. I just said write it like this, right? What's wrong with this? Aha. No, Ruby has a different way of doing it. You say put as error unless valid. Unless means if not. All right. That's literally what unless means in English. Okay. So unless is valid, do this. All right. So unless is the same as if, just means if not. Okay. Now, why am I telling you this? This is not a class about Ruby. However, the TA and I are going to be looking at your code. We want to be able to understand your code. And if you're writing Ruby code the way you're writing other languages, we're not going to be able to understand what you're doing. And generally speaking, when you're learning a new language, you should not bring your old habits from another language to this language. You should learn the style of this language. How do you learn the style of the language? There is an extensive Ruby style guide here online. It's long. These are all different rules of the style of writing Ruby. It's not telling you this is going to make Ruby work. This is telling you how you should express yourself, like the right way to do it and the wrong way to do it. Don't do this, do this. Like, for example, don't use 4 spaces to indent. Use 2 spaces. Okay. What else? Tons and tons of things. I'm not going to get into it. Okay. Don't write your code like this. put a space between every single operator, including commas. Okay, this is the style. Now, you don't have time to learn all these rules, but I want you to implement all these rules. How are you going to do it? Very simple. Every time you write code, run Rubocop on it. Okay, Rubocop is a package that you can install on your computer. Just do gem install Rubocop. Gem is Ruby's idea of a pip or a package. Okay, so install this package called Rubocop. What does it do? It looks at your code. So let's go to okay. Okay. So let's take a look at some code. This is some code that I have. Okay, this is Ruby code. Okay, this is the program I ran that goes to a website, gets the HTML, and saves it to file. Okay, this is the code for that. As you can see, this is the way I wrote it. All right, and unfortunately, it is not the way Ruby should look. To know what I did wrong, I can just run Rubocop, and oops, on the unidiomatic version of this file, and it will tell me in exhaustive detail all the things I did wrong. You're like, don't do this, don't do this. Oh, why did you do this? Error, 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 error. Now, these will not stop your program from running. I just ran it a moment ago. Okay, it's just telling you this does not look like Ruby. It looks like some other language, right? So how do you fix them? Well, you can just search for the name of the warning, like style, frozen literal, or metrics, method length, and you can Google what does it mean. Okay, some of these are easy to fix. Like if it says correctable, that means that actually you can autocorrect it one of two ways. You can say Rubocop. I think there's a -A. I don't know. Let me do --help. I think there's an autocorrect mode here somewhere where it'll autocorrect the mistakes you make. Okay, but I have a better way for you to do it. You can get Rubocop running automatically on your computer by using a linter. So if you're using VS Code, go ahead and install the extension, what do you call it? Extension, plugin extension, Ruby LSP, language server protocol. Okay, so install Ruby LSP in VS Code. And what this will do, as you can see on my screen here, is this will automatically run Rubocop every time you save your file, and it will underline all your style mistakes anyway. Okay, and in many cases, it'll tell you what is the problem. It'll tell you if it's autocorrectable or not. If it is something that's autocorrectable, like for example, for whatever reason, they prefer you don't call you errors error. They prefer you call it, what do they prefer you call it? Use the letter E instead of error. Whatever, fine. If it's fixable, you can do a quick fix. Autocorrect, bang, it'll autocorrect it for you. Okay, so a lot of mistakes are autocorrectable, and that's a great way to learn the language. You see the error, you learn about it, you autocorrect it, and you're like, oh, that's the way it is. Okay, but some you'll be surprised by, and we can discuss. For example, in Ruby, a convention is a function should never have more than 10 lines of code. Wow. Okay, which means you're encouraged to write small functions and use them within larger functions. So we'll talk about those as the semester goes on, but please just use Rubocop, obey the rules, this is the face I need, obey the rules, okay? And if you're wondering why a rule is the way it is, just ask us on Microsoft Teams. All right, so that's the way you can make sure your Ruby code looks like Ruby code. How many of you use a style guide or a linter like this in another language? You do? What language? TypeScript? What is the linter called? ESLint, right? ESLint. What do you use? Oh, for TypeScript also? ESLint. Okay, great. Anybody else? Shame on you. You should really learn to use a linter because you'll be surprised. The coding style you learn in school is exactly totally different than what you do in industry in a good company. All right, there's professional standards for writing every language, and they come with style guides and linters like this. You should use them extensively to learn what professional developers code looks like. Okay, and that's the best way to learn is just use a linter. Okay, so if you haven't used it for Python, go use it for Python or for Java or for whatever language you're using. Okay. I think by now everyone has a linter. Okay. But I believe, again, Rubocop was one of the linters that made linting very popular in the general programming community at large. It's one of the ideas from Ruby that got adopted in other languages. Okay. So yeah, use Ruby LSP. It should be able to work. Now, for it to work, however, I think you have to install Rubocop first, but you do that after we installed RBENV and Ruby. Okay. Then you install Rubocop. Okay. All right, great. All right, what else is there? Here are some other extensions for VS Code I recommend. Of course, GitHub Copilot, but like I said in the beginning, turn it off. See what your mistakes are, fix them yourself, go ask ChatGPT, okay? Try not to get everything auto-fixed, auto-written for you because it'll become a really bad habit. It'll be very hard to work on anything more sophisticated than baby exercises, okay? I'm a big fan of Git history diff. This basically allows you to check the difference in histories of your Git project. Okay, you can basically easily jump between commits and see how a file has changed, or see a file side by side between two commits and see what the differences are. Rainbow CSV, if you're working with CSV files, it draws your CSV in a beautiful rainbow shape. Right? Okay, that's that. I think I'm going to keep it short to this for today. I know I've only used a little bit more than 2 hours. Okay. From next week, we're going to begin talking about entropy and information theory a little bit, and then moving into cryptography. All right. Okay. I'm going to stop here. If anybody has any questions that you'd like to ask. No? All right. Otherwise, I'll stick around for a few minutes as I'm packing up. Welcome to ask me anything on your way out. Okay. All right. Thank you all very much. And with that, I'm going to stop the recording.